And there's a block party down in the original Thornton, a couple of courts, I believe.
7-5.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I took these around today to different apartment complexes and the rec center or the Carpenter Center, just because I know Ward 1 people work out there, and took some to the community center. And I've got these to still distribute to other. Went to one Starbucks said, yeah, sure, we'll set up, and another one said, I was told that another one, oh, that's against Starbucks. I said, oh, well, if you could just ask your manager. I said, because I've seen bulletin boards at other Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I said, so maybe it's franchise by franchise, and she was just sort of, I said, well, just ask your manager, please.
How dare you challenge me?
I just thought it was funny that I've never heard anybody at a Starbucks say that they can't put. I don't know. Do the grocery stores? Does Safeway have a bulletin board? I should go to Safeway.
Yeah, I don't know if they still do.
Not a lot of people hang out there.
Yeah.
It used to be at the entrance. I don't even pay attention, but it used to be at that entrance.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
That's what I thought too.
Okay, we want to get started?
Well,
Or is there more? Are there more?
well, there should be more. I guess I'll send out some texts here real quick and see where everybody is.
Oh, that's right.
There were I'm not expecting a ton more people, but
I don't know how late I'm going to be because the night before I'm going to the.
Stanley Cup.
So I'll try to make.
I sit on Adam's report. I sit on Adam's report.
I should have one.
And so she acted.
So we have some maps to hand out. We can hand those
thanks,
out.
thank you.
And I apologize if you find these confusing because they were created for another purpose.
I'm not a
Other than to describe
And you realize I can see what you mean, they're confused.
Well, these maps were created to show developers where the available land is. But if you look at the key, there is
Which is pretty
an urban
interesting.
renewal area boundary on there. It's a dashed red line. It's hard to see because it's gerrymandered along rights of way along Washington and Grant. You want one of these? Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Carla.
It's a pretty map.
Isn't it pretty?
I like the colors.
Yeah, kind of as a side note, hi everybody, I'm Chad, and I'm from the city's Economic Development Office. So once a year, we update these maps all over the city. We have a development opportunities brochure that we make available. It's also online on the Economic Development website. So we've got maps all over the city that show these purple areas that are available for development and has contact names and phone numbers. So that was why this map was
Are
created.
these available online too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yep. So, should we start? I think we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 total, counting
I think
sale.
there was one more coming behind you.
Okay,
Okay, just saying.
we'll chill. Yay!
Hi. How are you doing?
Doing all right.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming. And I know that one person's having a little trouble with childcare, so hopefully she will be here soon. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and start. It's about almost right after.
Yeah, we'll keep this organic. You can see that I've got the agenda up there on the screen. We're going to talk about generally what urban renewal means in Colorado. So give you the context of where that came from. And then this presentation is similar to one we gave council a couple of years ago, but this one's focused only on South Thornton. So hopefully it gives everybody the information you need. If not, we'll have lots of questions afterwards, and we've got lots of time. We've got John Cody, he's the Director of Economic Development, and then in the back of the room is Rob Kolstad, he's with the City Manager's Office, and he works intimately with city finances. So he's kind of the finance guy tonight. Right, Rob?
Whatever you say.
Oh, I've got a bully pulpit. So, lovely hat for you. If you get bored, you can get distracted with that. And it's a good one. So let's get started.
Actually, I left mine at home. I'm just going to borrow
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Thank
Take-
you.
Here's another glossy one. That's a special one. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to say, Thornton was created in the mid-1950s, but other older urban areas in the United States have always experienced urban decay, and they've come up with different schemes over the years to address that. And in the mid-1950s, urban renewal was huge in the United States. So the old cities east, in the Rust Belt, like Cincinnati or Cleveland or Buffalo or Detroit, they've had problems for hundreds of years with how to deal with blight. So in the 50s, it got really popular in the U.S. For states and cities within those states to create urban renewal authorities. And so Colorado's came about in 1958. And in 1975, they amended the law that gave urban renewal authorities the power to use tax increment financing. And I want to just take a second to make sure we all know what that is. So TIF, as it's abbreviated, is an urban finance tool. And it's used in a lot of places for a lot of different things. Sometimes it's used to do infrastructure. Sometimes it's used to do other things that cities are, provide services that cities are expected to provide. When it's put in place, I'll give you an example. The City Council established the Thornton Development Authority, or our Urban Renewal Authority, in 1981. And our first urban renewal plan area was established in 1982. That's a 25-year term, and during that time, the authority is given the power to capture taxes, that tax increment. So say you own a property and you pay $100 a year in taxes. This is just an example. Yeah. And we put an urban renewal authority in place, and next year your property taxes are $1,100, then I'm sorry, $100. So you pay $100 in taxes in 1981. In 1982, we put an urban renewal authority in place, and your taxes went up to $110. Okay, the Thornton Development Authority would have permission to take that 10. They still have to give the 100 to, in this case, the county. The county is the one that divides it up and gives it to the schools and everywhere else that it's divided up in the millage. So that's what tax increment financing is all about, is the increment above the baseline. So in 1982, an urban renewal authority was put in place in Thornton, south of 104th, pretty much all the commercial land south of 104th on both sides of I-25. After that, we established a couple other areas in the north. We have one that's basically the Grove Shopping Center and the North Washington one that have been in place since 2012 and 2003. They capture taxes to pay for infrastructure improvement. So in a lot of respects, the development that we've enjoyed up there came about as a result of the city investing tax increment finance funds into creating infrastructure like streets and water lines and sewer and stormwater and that whole shebang. So the original Urban Renewal Authority, I want to say again, in 2015, we'll get to this at the end of the presentation, the Colorado legislature made significant changes to the urban renewal law, which effectively makes it difficult for us to do anything new. And we'll talk about that towards the end. The purpose of the South Thornton urban renewal area, or really any of them, is to reduce, eliminate, and prevent the spread of blight. That's what urban renewal is all about. We also want to stimulate growth and investment within those boundaries. So the eligible activities include things like land acquisition, demolition, environmental cleanup, infrastructure improvements. A certain percentage can go to administration. You can use it for certain types of business incentive grants, and we do. We'll get to that in a minute. So it's kind of a tight thing. You can't use it for whatever you want. You can't use it in the neighborhood. You can only use it within the Urban Renewal Authority boundaries. So again, in Thornton, we try to limit our urban renewal activities to commercial areas. That has been the goal of the city for a long, long time, is to take care of blight in the commercial areas and help with the overall health of the city. So, as I said, originally we started in 1982, and it went 25 years all the way to 2007, and it's kind of, the faint blue is the Urban Renewal Authority area. Once that expired and we reauthorized it in 2012, it shrank a little bit. So the only difference between then and now, then it included Thornton Town Center, and is it called High Point across the street, High Point Park? That's not included in the urban renewal area anymore, mostly because we used a lot of funds in the first Urban Renewal Authority plan to incentivize and to improve those areas. So we'll talk a little bit about the old urban renewal area just to sort of refresh our memories. We excluded residential, as I said. We used real estate and sales tax increments created above the base, right? Remember I talked about the base. When it comes to real estate taxes, the base is whatever it was when we put the authority in place, and as that increases over time, we get to grab that increment. The sales tax increments it's a little more complicated, the calculation. It has to exceed an average of 1 or 2 years, previous. I don't exactly remember the details of that, but there's a baseline. And most of us would agree in good times you would expect the base to grow, and you would be well funded to do whatever you want. The TIF revenues that are captured are used to service debt too for these public improvements. And so that's a long in the tooth way of saying, look what we did. So in the 25 years, we used $44.4 million in public investment to leverage $344 million in private investment and 6,700 new jobs. So we used urban renewal TIF funds to improve the intersections of Thornton Parkway and I-25. It actually built some of Thornton Parkway, quite a bit of it. We used it at the 84th Avenue interchange with I-25. The Hacienda redevelopment, which was an old nasty hotel at 84th and I-25. So the city got involved. The city acquired, demolished, cleaned up, marketed, found developers, and it resulted in what we have there today, the Sportsman's Warehouse. North Valley Tech Center, the old mall, we helped get that going, and the private investment that came in there has significantly improved that space. It's a really nice place for smaller businesses to find good leasable space. It's really quite lovely in there. The Walgreens at 88th and Washington, and then Plaza Las Americas, which used to be referred to as Northland Plaza. That's another example. It's just to the south of Thornton Shopping Center. The city went in and acquired the site, and we demolished it, and we cleaned it up. We're actually still working on cleanup, and we sold it to one developer who balked, and the deal failed, and then United Properties came back to the board, and they built what we're seeing there today. And it's not 100% built out today, but it shows you the kind of thing the kind of power that's in this tool. If you want to, use that kind of funding to acquire property and, scrape it and find new development and bring it in. We haven't done that in a long time in Thornton, but, 15, 20 years ago, we were, I would say, a little more active at addressing blight by controlling it. So,
I ask you a question.
Yeah.
You may have it later. So, in the original plan, was that a dedicated fund within the city government,
it's
like it is in the?
I would say yes. It's they lump it all together. So the North Washington, the one that's the Grove, and the South Thornton URA, those funds are all together, but we account for them separately, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Right.
So why were those funds put together? They were separate to begin with. So why were they put together?
Why,
Why was the
Yeah.
TDA money transferred into the general fund? What was the reason for that?
I don't know. I probably misspoke when I said put together. So
Because
Yeah,
it is-
they're not accounted, or
they're accounted separately.
Yeah.
They're accounted for separately. But there are certain instances, like toward the end of the life of that 25-year term, if you've accomplished the things you wanted to accomplish, they let you continue to collect the real estate tax increment. And I think it's possible, I don't know for sure, Rob, that the city may have returned some of those funds to the general fund, but he's shaking his head no.
In the original TDA, the remaining balance was transferred into the new South URA.
That's what I thought, because the only reason that we have the money we have today to address the Thornton Shopping Center with is left over from the first urban renewal area, which is good, I'm thinking. So those are some of the projects that we accomplished in the first urban renewal area. Now here's the second one. It's shrunk. It's a little bit smaller, but it's still, other than Thornton Town Center and High Point, it's almost all the commercial property south of 104th on both sides of the highway, to my knowledge. So, and that's on your, if you can look at your map, somewhere buried in there is a little dashed bright red line that outlines this same area. But like I said, it's connected along street rights of way, so it's kind of hard to find sometimes. At the top of the screen here, this is where King Supers is, and Wendy's is like right there, and so on. And we are right now right here. So Washington and Huron and I-25.
It looks like Sam's Club is also excluded from that.
Correct. Everything north of City Hall is excluded right now.
Right. Everything north of
Yeah.
City Hall between Grant and the interstate is excluded.
Yep.
Well, and even Washington and Vivo, because High Point Park is also excluded.
So anyhow, yeah, the purpose remains to eliminate and prevent blight. We capture only the real estate tax increment. That was a decision that council made back in the before Chad time. So I wasn't here in 2012, so I only know what I'm told. But the decision was made. Not everybody knows this. Let's take a pause and talk about municipal finance. How do cities in Colorado get their money? Because that varies state to state. Some states, they get a chunk of the real estate taxes. City gets most of its money from sales taxes. If we don't have sales taxes, we don't have revenue, and we're not going to be able to provide services to the citizens, which is why being a bedroom community alone in Colorado is a recipe for disaster. You have to have sales tax producing enterprises in your city, or you won't have any money. That's just, the sad fact of it. Am I over describing that, Rob, municipal finance? Yeah, sales tax is the...
How does destination sourcing impact bedroom communities? That's why I'm like, it's not a recipe for disaster anymore. Fun fact, I work for DOR, so I'm very familiar. I run
Yeah.
less TP&E.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, isn't it? And but we're all going to get our $500 Tabor refund too. So I mean, it's but it's kind of funny because a lot of communities in Colorado, some of the smaller ones that are facing growth right now, didn't necessarily know that at the beginning. They didn't know they wanted to be a bedroom community and they wanted everybody else to leave them alone. But they would have a very difficult time paying for their services. When it comes to water and sewer, those are enterprises and those are paid for with your bills. But the other stuff we expect, police, street lights that work, traffic control, that kind of stuff, you'd have a hard time paying for it. So it's a kind of a serious side note. And you can see our revenues here have been slowly, I kind of gave a snapshot since 2017. Those are our annual revenues before expenditures. Between 2017 and 2021. I'm told that the reason it dropped in 2021 is we lost some money on investments because we have Thornton Development Authority has money invested. It's that money that we have set aside for the Thornton Shopping Center. That's not just sitting in a bank account somewhere. It's invested, making better than simple interest, I would hope. So that's what we're.
Are these revenues, are they all of the 4 wards combined or just?
Now, this is just the Thornton Development Authority area in South Thornton.
Oh, okay.
How did it lose money in investments last year when it was like the strongest market in history?
I don't know. I guess it depends on when our accounting staff, turned off the books. Because I lost it all already, but I made a lot of money in 2021 too, at least on paper. So, at any rate, Sherry?
Does it depend on where you invest your money as to what you put it in as
Yeah.
to what you get out
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, it does. And we actually started spending some money on Thornton Shopping Center in 2021, probably more than we ever have in the past. So a little bit of that went into it. We'll drill down into that a little bit more here. But the important takeaway, as of the close of 2021, that's our balance. We got about $8 million potentially available in the south area. So here's the projects we've been working on. The Thornton Shopping Center, obviously, and that's really just getting started. We're continuing to clean up Plaza Las Americas. There's this little tiny parcel behind Jiffy Lube that's still got some gookus in it that needs to be remediated, and we're working on that. The Dutch Brothers at I-25 and 84th, the TDA put $40,000 into that because it used to be a gas station and there were still some problems with the soil there, and that was a good investment. There's a Panda Express that's slated for the old AAA propane. That's like at 85th and Washington on the west side, and
Where Roma was.
yeah, and they've been working on cleaning that up. They meaning the state. The state has an insurance fund available for petroleum sites, and they finally got closure on that at the end of December of this past year. So last time I checked, it's a go for the Panda Express. They've made it. They're in their 5th round of review at the city development, so it's just about done. And then the Gateway District, which was at one time known as the Healthcare District. The Thornton Development Authority owns some vacant land basically across the street from where we're sitting on the other side of Thornton Parkway. And,
I have the Village Inn that's just empty there. Is that part of ours too?
That's part of the South Thornton area. That's going to be a 7-Eleven.
Oh, sorry, because I just saw the Dutch Bros, but I didn't see that, so I was just, is that going to be one of the projects as well, or?
No.
not that we're supporting with TDA money.
No, it's not. They're not getting TDA money. No, but it is part of the South Thornton. It's in the boundary of the South Thornton area.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm coming in a little bit late, and so I'm sure that I missed some important information. But is the city of Thornton helping to fund or build or facilitate, like, big corporations, opening up businesses like Panda Express and Dutch Brothers?
Is there any preference given to like small businesses or local businesses?
Or non-fast food and.
Yeah, I would say that again, the purpose of urban renewal is to fight blight. And so the properties I talked about are or were part of the city's strategic planning process. So for instance, the Dutch Brothers was part of the original Hacienda development. That sold to Sportsman's Warehouse, and they just didn't know what to do with it. So eventually they sold it to a developer who was going to do the Dutch Brothers. And since we already had money into it, I kind of...
There was still environmental remediation necessary on the Dutch Brothers side.
Yeah.
And that's what the money went
Yeah. So
that was a gas station previously?
Yeah.
So those are messy too.
So the idea is...
And city money being spent to like
And how does
the locations like more, habitable for business then, or I don't know how it works.
Well, so I'm not sure exactly when you came in, but
There's a few minutes.
so the South Thornton Urban Renewal Area, it generates tax increment financing that the city can use to do a number of things that are considered qualify as fighting blight. So we can buy property, we can clean it up, we can demolish buildings, we can repave the street, we can do infrastructure improvements.
But economic revitalization is also one of the goals of the urban renewal plan. So it can be used for purposes of economic revitalization. In the case of Dutch, there was a little bit of both. There hasn't been much economic revitalization that has occurred on the west side about 25% of the time. So the environmental remediation that occurred on that site and the economic revitalization of having an ongoing economic activity on that site were both goals that were accomplished.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I just, my personal preference would be to have a focus on like smaller businesses and, you know, versus corporate, but I do see how, you know, having people who are there on a site every day, you know, regardless of if that's a big corporation or not, is
Well, one of the other things
helpful.
that Chad is going to talk about here, we have the South Thornton Attraction and Retention Grant Program, which predominantly is focused on small businesses in the South Thornton area. And it's a grant program that helps predominantly mom and pops businesses in South Thornton. And it helps them get off the ground. And the one thing that it does that our other grant programs don't do is it helps small businesses get established. I'm going to turn around. It helps
You're
them
gonna get stuck.
established. So, for example, the first $10,000 does not require a match. So they can get a $10,000 grant to get established. And then they can get a second $5,000, which is a 50-50 match. So in other words, for $5,000, they can get $15,000 from the city in terms of grant for a small business to get established. Now, they do have to have a business plan. They do have to show that they're a worthwhile going concern, but we do help them get off the ground. And that particular grant is only for the South Thornton Urban Renewal area.
Is there much demand for that? Is it being
There is
utilized?
demand. There isn't necessarily as much as you might think there would be, but it's also constrained to some degree by a variety of things. One is we don't have that many spaces available for new businesses. One of the things that we're beginning to focus on, we have a city staff run organization called the Alliance Business Center. It's over at the Pinnacle Shopping Center, if you're familiar with where that is. And they're available strictly to help businesses apply for the grant, write business plans, get their business established, and help it grow and succeed. And the purpose of that is to try to revitalize areas of the city that are dilapidated or need more help to keep the business community going. It also has a component which is called Alianza, which is focused on Spanish-speaking businesses, where there's a greater concentration in that part of town. So that's a couple of the elements that are supported by the South Urban Renewal area to provide that kind of support to specifically small businesses. But the South Urban Renewal area, one of its goals is to economically revitalize the area through a variety of activities. Those are a couple.
Oh, you know, if I could just, I'm sorry. Part of the reason we called this meeting was I know that some residents cored some documents specifically about the current South Thornton URA and where the money is going. And so if we could let Chad go a little bit further with his presentation.
Yeah, I've only got 2 slides left.
And then we can ask some questions and point out, you know, how it's different from the previous URA agreement that lapsed in 2007, and also how it varies from the North Thornton TDAs and URA plans. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good. That's great. And actually, winding down, if you look at our expenditures, this is a snapshot. So this is 2021. we spent a little over $428,000. So that supported a portion of staff salaries. As John said, the South Thornton Attraction and Retention Grants that are managed out of Alianza, or the Alliance Center, sorry, and additional testing at the Thornton Shopping Center. It was, I think, over $100,000 in due diligence testing we did last year. And what else? Oh, the Plaza Las Americas still has a small dry cleaning chemical issue that we're working on. So that's illustrative. We were talking about mispronunciations earlier. That's a snapshot of what we spent money on in 2021, knowing that we had this big Thornton Shopping Center thing looming over our heads. Because everybody knows the thing's worth $7 million if it's clean, and it's going to cost twice that to clean it. So how are we going to do it? Well, a big part of that is the $7 million that we've informally set aside, and we have briefed the authority. Let me back up about urban renewal. In Thornton, City Council is the urban renewal authority. They just adjourn one meeting and put on a different hat. And in some cities, it's different. In Arvada, they've got a very sophisticated urban renewal authority that's staffed by separate board members from the city, and they have so much money they can afford to hire staff. But they're dealing with a different set of circumstances over there, so that works. This is important because in 2015, there were changes to urban renewal law in Colorado, and it said, okay, you guys, from now on, any urban renewal authority that makes a substantial a substantial change to what's in their plan, maybe they want to expand the area, maybe they want to do new projects in the area. If they make that change, it kicks in the requirements of this new law, which are that the urban renewal authorities have to have 13 members, and it has to include more taxing jurisdictions. So you would have 10 appointed by council, you would have 1 appointed by the county commission, you have 1 board member from a special taxing district, so it could be any number of different special taxing districts that are in place, like fire districts or whatever. It just varies. And then an elected board member from the school district. So right now, when our authority decides to spend money on something, and we're capturing, real estate taxes, which are, the majority of that is school taxes. They don't have a voice. So if we make in Thornton, if we make substantial changes to any of our urban renewal plans, we'll have to reconstitute the board. And there's been a reluctance on the part of city leadership to go down that road until we absolutely have to. The thing about urban renewal is, if you live in a city, and we're going to live here, and it's going to be a city for a long, long time, you're always going to be doing urban renewal. It's not a one and done. You're always going to have to invest public funds into fighting blight and making things better. So I think if I can speak for council or the TDA, their thinking today is they'd rather have as much control as possible before they have to relinquish it to a bigger board.
So
I'm not sure what, I as a council member, I can tell you I don't know what the reasoning is. I just know there's been reluctance to make change about it. And, and
it's human nature, right?
I can't really say specifically. This was one reason that was cited back before I was on council, and Sherry, my mentor and predecessor here, can attest to that in 2020 there was a presentation, which some of these slides are similar to that, and that show the difference between the URA that expired in 2007 to the one we have currently, and the conversation at that time about would we change it. This law was cited, and the general response was, well, we don't, as I recall from listening to that meeting, was that they didn't want to make that change. But if I could, I have a couple questions. So just to clarify, so talking about tax increment financing, so the base of the current South Thornton URA is about $8 million a year. That's what the base is.
Whatever it was in
2012
okay. When they put it in
because
place.
This is Jessica shared with me this because we weren't sure what we were looking at. We've done a little research, so we just want to ask some And Jessica, please jump in, because you're the one that had the documents.
get my.
So the base that is captured, the property tax that's captured and kept in, that is the base that goes into the South Thornton URA, is $8 million.
No, let's,
Sales tax.
That's the tip.
Yeah, no.
Not the city, I'm sorry, what did I say?
You said that it was, what did you say?
The base.
The base is the property, I'm sorry, did I say sales tax?
No, the sales tax is what goes into.
Right, no, I know that, but I'm saying, so the base that stays in there is $8 million, right?
Well, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is what it
According
was.
to this document that the city sent in response to the Cora for this information, shows that the base is in the general area of $8,700,000. The sales tax, which would be the increment that would go over and above that base, rather than remaining in this current version of the South Thornton URA, goes into the general fund, which is why the South Thornton URA has been sitting at $8 million for approximately the last 10 years, rather than increasing by capturing that increment to be used. And according to the document that the city shared out, that we're looking at approximately $30 million that's gone into the general fund, that rather than staying in the South Thornton URA for it to be used for revitalization
Do they go into the
in.
general fund from their sales taxes, in other words?
No, because if you see
That's-
here in the
that's why I
annual
guess I was trying to
report,
get to that
so if you
earlier.
look at the annual report, so the South Thornton URA, so this is the 2021 TDA report.
That's kind of what the gist of what I was trying to ask
I'm sorry.
earlier. Oh, that's the gist of my question earlier about the totals, if they were all the wards or if it was just Ward 1, because I was trying to figure out like what goes into the general fund and what is going into each of the wards and how it gets divvied out to spend, because
Well, here's the thing, if it stays in the South Thornton URA, then that money is to be used for revitalization and for the urban renewal plan. Once it goes into the general fund, then it can go anywhere. It is not necessarily designated, earmarked to come to be so
Even though it's the money from.
even though it's the
tax.
sales tax generated by the businesses in the South Thornton URA.
Yeah,
And,
so,
and the other two URA plans, the one at 144th and the one in North Washington, they retain their sales tax increments. So they have their base also. And then their sales tax increment over the base stays in those plan areas and is used in those plan areas for, in those areas, those are newer areas of town, so that's actually being used for development as opposed to revitalization, because those areas have not yet aged out, is how I understand it.
so the question is why they get to retain their tax, but we don't.
Right.
So
Why
ours go into the general fund?
here's a point of clarification, and I'm not a tax expert. But he is, no, not really. But,
Looking at you, Rob.
but here's my impression. So in South Thornton today, all we capture is real estate tax increment.
Correct.
That's it. Okay. The sales tax increment, you have to know what you're going to spend it on, and you have to bond for it, right? So you have to have a project. You can't just capture it and put it in a fund. I don't think. Can
Yes,
you?
you can.
Can you, Ross?
Yes, you can.
The sales
You can
tax?
save it and put it in a fund.
What's
yes.
happening is it's going.
That's what you do with it. That's what the URA says, is you have to take that and put it in a special fund so that it doesn't get commingled where it's not supposed to be. That's the point of having a
What
plan.
I'm trying to get out with all of this is that, and I mean, it's kind of a big picture as well, is that we have, like, you were listing all of the things, all the projects that we need to do, and $7 million is just, I mean, and you even said it in your slideshow that there's more funds needed going to the Thornton Shopping Center, and if you've driven around South Thornton, and it just, and I mean, you only have like 4 of those things on the list. I mean, what are we going to have left over for all of the other rundown stuff?
Well, that's a very good question. What are we going to spend after we have, after we're financing using all of our TDA money towards Thornton Shopping Center?
Yeah, so my question is, so since it's happened, we know it's happened, and we can't, and like, how do we fix that? Like, so if they were able to take our money and put it into this general fund, and now you, as you said, everything's kind of done up on, 144th and such, well, why aren't we getting some of that back? Like, I mean, here's the deal. this is how I'm looking at it, is like, we had to help out a little bit, to
Yeah.
make Thornton going. Of course, we want that. We all probably use 144th. I mean, if it wasn't so far, I'd probably use it more too. However, now it's time for it to come back so that we can do this. So how do we get that done?
What I understand either is how we pay for a 20 million, renovation for the recreation center pool, but we get a 20 million rec center here. When the city took 30 million, but we only have 20 for that when we help to finance some of the other projects on the other part of the city.
Those are fair questions, but urban renewal is just for urban renewal.
Yeah.
And the other parts
Yeah,
of
we-
municipal finance, how you pay for
And the
things,
thing
it's
is,
different.
like, we just want to know where the money
Yeah,
went.
yeah.
Well, and I want to understand how that works. I mean, if they were taking, so if our money was going to help other things, is it different funds? Is that what's going on?
Our urban
Clarify.
renewal plan was written, the one after 2007, that one lapsed. The one they wrote in 2012, they changed where the tax increment goes. They put that into the general fund rather than keeping it here. The other URAs are written, the TIF, the increment that they capture has to stay to be used within the boundaries of that plan.
And so because of the rules, they can't change it
Right.
back, is that
Right.
part of it?
Well,
or-
the goal of, I mean, as I understand it, again, and I'm also not a finance expert, I will admit that freely, but usually the TIF, the increment that's over the base, the whole idea, you write a plan in order to capture that, not to give it away, so that you are specifically targeting those dollars to be used to the benefit and the commercial and economic revitalization of that specific area.
So does a new law or new rule, I don't know, I just need to have new wording to adjust so that we can change how things get divvied out? I guess, sorry, I'm just trying to understand.
The new law, if we wanted to, now that if we want to change, if we want to write a new URA for South Thornton, then because it's after 2016 now, or the 2015 law, whatever was signed or kicked in as of January 1st, I believe, of 2016, then we would have to change the makeup of our board, or excuse me, our authority. It would no longer be just our city council. We would have to have, 13 members as designated by that law.
And what is the step for us to do that?
Is there a downside to doing that?
I don't know. It's
We're
a
gonna get
change.
to you guys, I
It's a
promise.
change, but I don't know. It puts more people at the table and different voices, which I think was the
Yeah,
intent
it's necessary.
of the intent of the people who wrote the law.
Here's a little thing to think about, because this is what I've been told, is, so right now, we don't capture sales taxes in the South Thornton area. They go right to the general fund. So the city, if the city wants to spend money in the neighborhoods where the houses are, on new streets, they can. They can go right to the general fund. If it was in the Thornton Development Authority, they could only spend it on Washington and Grant and
But
the
that's what they
areas
do
that
in
are
other
commercial.
parts of the city. If they need
Yeah.
streets in the other part of the city, they can go to the general fund.
Yeah.
And then they
But
spend it
what
up
we
here.
don't have is money
And the only thing that's
set
really
aside for our
sequestered,
revitalization specifically.
and the only thing that's really sequestered based on geography is the TIF. The general fund isn't. It's all one fund. So let's go over here, because I know
So I
you're.
have a question. So when they were developing Plaza Americas in 2008, they discovered the dry cleaning spill. And then in 2012, they made the urban renewal district again. Why haven't, over the course of the last, 10 years, or plus, have we not been capturing that as a savings account for the giant spill we knew was there? Like, why are we just now hearing about this years later?
Well, so with the giant spill, you mean Thornton Shopping Center?
Yeah, well, we all know where it came from.
With-
It's downhill from Thornton Shopping Center, and just.
Actually, where Northland was and Plaza Americas is
Yeah.
today, right about where I can't remember what it's.
They had their own spill.
They had their own spill, and there was
Oh, wow.
they
So
found
what are
out.
they doing to regulate business?
They found
in South Thornton?
they found out
Nonsense.
from forensic research that the guys at this dry cleaners on that side of the street were taking the spent fluid, and throwing it out the
Yeah.
back door. And it went, and it found the utilities, and it followed like the water lines and stuff, and so it's,
Yeah.
It's,
So,
uh,
and there's also a plume across the street where the stinker store or whatever that was used to be. Like, why are we not regulating businesses dumping toxic waste in our neighborhood?
they're regulated by the state and by EPA above them, so some stuff the state regulates and some stuff the EPA does directly, or they give money to CDPHE. So all that stuff's known.
They've won it 50 years
That
ago.
in South
At
Thornton.
the
Yeah.
time
Yeah,
these
'cause
spills
that
happened, those
so
things
long
were not,
ago.
weren't actually,
Yeah.
they predate
It's-
that kind of.
It's more common than you'd like to
They
think.
had to have done it for decades.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, I'm sure they did.
I used to do it for a living, clean up sites. Pretty much every four corners in the United States is contaminated with one thing or another, unfortunately. Gasoline and dry cleaning chemicals are the most prevalent, so. It's, so, we're doing what we can. At the time, the guy that owns Thornton Shopping Center, he bought it and didn't even look into the environment, and then he got stuck with it. And then the state took him to court, and they found him personally liable. But if you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip, if he doesn't have the money, it's never going to get done. So,
Can you go back a couple slides to what the previous URA, how that was leveraged?
Yeah.
Because the other
Oops.
thing that
oh, you mean
that I
the,
didn't understand, the couple slides back about how that was leveraged, the one that, and the URA that ended in 2007, that that it had captured over the lifetime of that URA $44 million that was leveraged into 300, because that's the other thing a TDA can do is leverage financing with the money it collects. That's how Trailwinds was built, and the new police training facility and the active adult center. So that's another question that, or what has happened over the years is that between 2018 and 2020, Thornton raised financing that combined is about the amount is approximately $92 million to have paid for all of those facilities. We have not leveraged that kind of, we don't have that, we have not leveraged debt or financing in the same way down here. So that's another issue, that's something else that the TDA could look at doing.
And my other question was, so does the tax revenue have to come from the urban renewal? Because, as I said, I work for the Colorado Department of Revenue. I was their tax communication specialist for 2 years. And I know that destination sourcing, which is where tax is based off of where the product is delivered, not where you bought it from, has changed the game for municipal taxation. So what impact has that had on Thornton's sales tax revenues?
I don't know, because we don't capture sales tax in the South Thornton area. I imagine it would. I imagine it's resulted in some cases in more revenue than we anticipated. I would think, like up where Sam's Club is, and
ensure that
Rob, do
stays
you
in
know
our
about that?
neighborhood?
or Costco. I mean, not Sam's Club. Costco's in an urban renewal
When you
area.
say destination sourcing, you mean
Amazon.
online sales, basically?
Yeah,
Is
well,
that
I
what you
mean, at this point, it's anything that wherever you take receipt of the product is the taxable point. So if you say you buy something, I was just at American Furniture Warehouse the other day. If you buy something at American Furniture Warehouse that you have to deliver to your house, they tax it based off of your house.
Yeah. So, and that is how we collect our sales tax. So we definitely have seen a bump from an increase in online shopping because of that, and as well as the vendors' compliance, because that was always when online shopping first started to become prevalent. It was kind of the Wild West. If you bought something on Amazon, sometimes you paid tax, sometimes you didn't.
Yeah.
You were supposed to declare that as use tax if you didn't pay sales tax, and that doesn't always happen. And so, by virtue of increased compliance and then increased online shopping, we've definitely seen the city seeing the increased revenue in that area. I'm not sure that was your question or
Well, I
not.
want to know, like, sort of how much. I mean, I can't get too much into it, otherwise I'll get in trouble at work. But like, how much?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I would think, theoretically, I think it would result in shrinking revenues for the Urban Renewal Authority if enough people are buying stuff from their home and being taxed for there. I don't think the sales, I don't know, it's up to the collectors to figure that out.
Yeah, my question
I don't know
is
how
there a
they
way
do
that
it.
we can capture all of our lovely COVID purchases revenue and like keep it in our neighborhood? Because, I mean, right now, the Thornton redevelopment district is a ghost town. How are you expecting to generate sales tax revenues off of like a condemned, half-abandoned building?
Exactly. And so if I'm hearing right with what Kathy was saying and what I got from the documents the city clerk sent to me, 30 million out of sales tax or URA money were taken away from South Thornton or going into general fund.
Yeah.
Plus 92 million were borrowed to do the Trails of Winds, the Carpenter Rec Center, the adult center. So that's like 122 million that had gone into North Thornton. Let's make it better. Let's do all this. But we want to remedy pollution that is affecting people's health, and we do not have enough money because Thornton Shopping Center has been happening for a decade. We had to go myself. I myself, and I'm talking for myself, it took me like 50 visits and to council meetings to get some things rolling.
Because if we had that $30 million,
But I'm just wanna, is that what I'm?
We could have already
that's
paid the
not-
Thornton Shopping Center. We could
Is
have
that what I'm
already did
listening
$70.
here? Is
Yeah,
that what
we
we're
want
That's
to
why I
like
want
go
to
in.
at least concentrate on fixing it. I mean, we can beat the dead horse about what's happened, and I'm not being mean,
Yeah.
but what are we gonna do about it?
Yes.
Because this is what happens all the
Turbo
time.
in South Thornton.
Yeah, and once it hits the general fund, it's gone.
Well, that's what, I mean, this is what we wanted to talk about tonight. This is what we wanted to make sure that we understood. Because this is not the first time Chad's explained URAs and TIF financing to me. And the first time, I think I nodded a lot. And then I went home and thought about it some more. It took,
And I'm not an expert either, and it's that much of the municipal financing pie, that much. We get money from so many different places, and there's so many different strings attached to it on what you can and can't do with it, that it's easy to say, and I would agree with you, I would say this too, we're building all these rec centers, how come we can't keep our house clean? That's a fair question, but the money comes from different places.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the city. I understand that that the URA has to be used for commercial that's for commercial properties. But just saying that there's appetite to leverage monies to build things in other parts of the city that has not. We haven't seen that same appetite by the TDA to do that. To leverage that kind of, to leverage money in that same way down here.
Like old Arvada, like let's make South Thornton beautiful
Because
and
what you
interesting.
said, because they have a big authority, 13 members, everybody has voices, so we
Is
can only
city
have
council
the
open
city
to a
council.
new,
Like,
So that's why.
Where's my other Ward 1 member? Why is he not
the,
here advocating for us and listening?
I guess the biggest thing I guess I want to narrow down is you can hear the frustration in the room when you watch constantly new stuff being built in newer parts of Thornton, and somehow we constantly get told when we drive around shopping center after shopping center with potholes and nameless other problems and rundown buildings, and somehow you're like, oh well, it's not, we only have so much for you guys, and the general fund seems to go to everything else. I don't know. So I guess it's just frustrating to try to understand all of this and just being told like somehow you still don't quite have enough money for.
So I guess my question is, so URAs can last. I'm sorry, did somebody else?
Yeah, she wasn't speaking for you.
I'm sorry.
I understand all the things that need to be fixed. I'm confused about some of the newer things that we're seeing going on. Why 4 gas stations on the corner of Huron and Thornton Parkway.
Yeah.
Every
I'm so sick of gas stations. I mean,
has a
Portland's
gas
the worst
station.
place to
gas
break
station too.
That's more.
They put 5 there if they could.
Development and zoning issue as opposed to URA. That's not, I mean, it's
Not
a
here.
valid question.
But not here.
But it's different from, because the TDA and the URA financing is not.
And here's the thing, if I can interrupt, I love grassroots, okay? So tonight, I came and tried to explain the status quo. Here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Now, if the neighborhood and council decide we need to do it different, then that's what we'll do. So, but that's a heavy lift.
Advisory board or whatever for South Thornton.
Like to
Is that doable in the near future? Is city council
to make
warm
changes to
that
our
idea?
urban renewal area plan.
Well, we
Sherry.
can have, you want me to whistle? We can read about that.
Okay, is that something that's practical to be hopeful in the near future?
Well, the STAR plan, as I understand, I mean, not much was ever implemented from the STAR plan, so some of that would still be, could be desirable. We'd have, just to pick the plan, that plan already exists, so I don't know.
That's not reinventing the wheel, so
But I
that's
think, so that's a conversation we can have, but I guess,
So Sherry's been raising her hand for a while too, and she's too close, I can't see her.
I just have a question, because I feel the same way that you all do. Just leave it council. Drama is everywhere. But anyway, my question is this. I understand that sales tax has gone into the general fund. Okay. So what actually stays in the South? What about our property tax? Where does that go? Is it still going in the same place? Or does it benefit the South end? What happens to the property tax? We already know the sales tax, you've already taken that.
Yeah, so, and that's a great question, Sherry. I can tell you this, I've got this revenue thing, right? So the revenues there, 2017 to 21, is just a snapshot. Those are the property tax increments, the total. That's the total we get. So
But that's for commercial or residential?
that's for the urban renewal area, which is all commercial. And we don't capture residential property taxes, we capture commercial property taxes within that mapped
So
area.
where does the residential property tax go?
That goes to the county, right, Rob?
Yeah.
And if you look at your,
percentage go to the city because in my
a piece of it, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the pie is. I know like the school district's like 101 mils, isn't it? It's a lot.
The pieces is a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the amount, $300,000 property tax, and of course the sales tax went into the general fund. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Too many blurred lines these days.
But what's the answer?
It's like when we use the 7 million to go to the Thornton Shopping Center, then what? Like she said, because if we're using all these taxes, then what do we have left to do all the other?
So for the status quo for today, just say, for sake of argument, we get $500,000 a year, right? And about 300 of that supports city salaries, administration, and special programs like the grant funds.
Common sense will tell you $7 million is not going to cover the Thornton Shopping
No.
Center. We're looking at anywhere from $20 to $30 million.
Yeah. Hopefully not that much, but we've
That's the.
$30 million.
council has a strategy. Council has a strategy for paying for getting Thornton Shopping Center done. So none of us here had to worry about how that's going to happen. It's going to happen.
So if our current balance is roughly
800.
The fund balance is currently 8 million. And if we end up spending 7 million on, then our fund balance just goes down to $1 million. We don't have to keep that, so that's not the new base, but because the base.
It has nothing to do with base. That's just the fund balance. That's the fund balance,
Okay.
which is an accumulation of revenue year after year.
Okay.
So my question is, if the city decided to modify the URA and went with all of those additional people, who makes that decision?
That's a great question.
City council.
Our information
Well, they had 10 that they appointed, and then the other 3 were.
are appointed by the outside tax jurisdiction.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
But who, if someone decides,
Well, that's what
okay,
I'm
we
saying,
need
so
to
they're
go
gonna
that
keep
way,
appointing them. I mean, they do that.
if that's a city council decision, we already know it's not gonna.
Well, they'd have to make the decision. They could also make the decision to do like the Arvada model. They could do it completely separate. But again, we've already got 3 urban renewal area plans in place, and I don't think that there's any desire to make substantial changes to them because it would probably cost the city more
But they're
than
not the same.
they
The plans are
benefit.
not the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Because the other 2 plans keep their sales tax, we do not, so they're not, the plans are not the same.
Right.
The other thing is the Thornton Town Center, which is anchored by Walmart and Home Depot, is currently not included in the South Thornton URA, and that, over the last few years, the anchor stores are doing very well, but everything in between is becoming blight, it's
So like she said, and I'm just gonna ask the same that she did, like, we're gonna make the money out of old buildings, blighted sites, because that's the only thing they're leaving us.
And with the increase in sales tax revenue coming to our residential properties, is there a way that we can capture some of that?
Not without the
Yeah.
changes.
So how do you
Let's
keep
make
the
a wish
council
list.
away from the general?
Good luck.
That's pretty much.
That's a great question. I mean,
The
no.
council is very tainted.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We get nothing, they get everything.
Yep.
Most of the money comes from here. We get nothing. Get rid of the council, let somebody in the city get up and actually say something. The people in the city are afraid for their jobs because the council controls them. They got them right here.
Yep.
So what are we doing? Wasting our time over here? Get rid of the people in the council, get a new election going, and let this be a real city. Because it's not a real city.
No
I
argument.
totally agree, but then.
We need to get rid of
the
the
I
city
think I've said
manager.
enough.
Our city manager needs to go.
And the development
That's the
authority
problem.
too, I mean, it's common sense. If somebody, development comes and asks me for a permit to build a gas station, but I already have, 3 gas stations, why am I gonna prove that? It's like, I'm gonna buy a wash machine when I already own 3 wash machines, so what?
That has to do with the comprehensive plan, and that we do not have
Me
a
too.
strategic plan which is, so, and those are zoning issues and things that are based on the comprehensive plan. So I think so that's a little bit different than what this immediate topic is here.
My biggest concern is that, is that the Thornton Shopping Center needs so much attention and so much work, and this is just one part of South Thornton. We almost border Federal Heights, and there's so much work that needs to be done now. And I guess my biggest worry is that we have so many projects. What is going to happen to all this? What are we going? We pour everything into Thornton Shopping Center, which I'm excited about. Don't get me wrong.
Right, I hear you.
But what does that leave us? Because we've been neglected for so long, and we still have so far to go. And like they said, we're building all of this other stuff, and so I'm just concerned at what is going to continue to deteriorate and what's going to cost us millions and millions of dollars over periods of time while we watch all of these things around us deteriorate.
So I guess, what do you know about the 2015 law? We know says if you make a substantial change to your URA, it changes the makeup of the authority. Does it affect anything else? Does it change? Has it put different limits on how we can structure our finances and the TIF and things like that, or is it really just to make up?
Well, I think you have to know what you want to do, because if you want to make a change to it, you've got to understand what is the change I want to make.
No, but I'm saying, what does the law dictate? The law basically is the main dictate of that 2015 law, the composition of the authority.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it's squishy word or squishy phrase called substantial change. Nobody really knows what substantial change means, so you have to get outside counsel involved and all that. But I haven't forgotten about you right there. Go ahead.
I kind of have two things. My first question is, when our area, our ward is so dilapidated, why is our whole entire bucket going to the Thornton Shopping Center? Would it be possible to instead have that money go to the other dire need projects and maybe have like the city general fund like pony up the dough for that?
Yeah, that is a good idea.
So here's what first of all, here's what.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
That's what let's email everybody and their mama and go to every single meeting.
Here's what we're looking at for Thornton Shopping Center. We've already all concluded that there's not enough money in the TDA fund for it. So the city could pledge general fund revenues for the balance. And they've also are looking at ARPA, which is some of the relief funds that came down from the federal government for relief for COVID. So those are some of the things that you can do. And really, it depends on what you want to accomplish. What I've presented to you here tonight is what is the plan that was put in place in 2012 and where are we?
Yes.
So that's where we are. Now, if that's insufficient and we have other projects we want to do, we can create, the buzz around that and create the financing maybe from URA, maybe from other sources. So it's just a matter of getting creative with what you want to accomplish. The other thing is private business. There's a limit in Colorado, and I don't know what that is. I don't want to call it a moral thing, but it's a cultural thing. There's a limit on how much government should get involved with private business, right? How much should we put into something to support a private enterprise? At some point, there's a tipping point where we've put in enough to make something happen, but we have to make sure that we're not, throwing everything into one basket to the detriment of other businesses. So we have to keep that in mind too.
It's like making like a building functional. Like, have you been into like the bathroom at the art thrift store? Like, I feel like I'm gonna get hepatitis from it.
So, but the question is,
They should be fixing.
the question is responsibility. Is it the landowner's responsibility or the city's?
But we should have a code.
So.
All these businesses.
I agree with that.
I know. I never had it.
Tell me how much money was spent on Walmart to clean it up, because that was also part of that light. And you guys put how much money into that development over there in order to clean that up?
At Plaza Las Americas?
Yes.
It was a lot. I can't quote it right
No,
now.
not a lot. I want to figure.
I don't know because I wasn't here, but I could look it up.
John knows.
It was north of 20 million. I guarantee you.
So we can think that, but we only have 8?
My other thing is, I'm sorry, but I've been trying not to pay attention to our politics as much because it is just so frustrating and disheartening.
Depressing.
Like has the selection of like Republican and Democratic candidates happen for our, national, like is Coleman the Republican nominee? Or
She's in a primary, so that's at the end of this month.
I think that's like a great platform to ask for like larger national news organizations to look into like some of the scandal that's been going on in the city, because our seat is going to be like the hottest, most like purple, like which way they're gonna go, like tons of money is gonna pour into this. And I think part of why things are so frustrating and such a mess is because like local news barely exists at all. And so, maybe we just need to like ask for some help from journalists to help us figure out like what's going on and what needs to happen and what has happened. Especially with scandals like having our representatives removed and be replaced by somebody who's not even here.
Well, so let me just say, and just as nothing has to do with it, just for the
We should have done a round table.
But she pledged to term limits.
I know.
Pledged, but she's in a lawsuit because she's fighting term limits.
I think NPR and other, reporters and news outlets would
Lost the ball. Where's the ball?
So, are there any more questions about the South Thornton URA, about how it's currently written and what's happening with the money in that
Do you think that if we go to council and we keep demanding that we go ahead and start with that 2016 new law?
I think that,
I think things need to be changed. I think our money needs to come back to us. Obviously, we had 20 million to clean up the Walmart over there, but we don't have
Which was
enough.
pre-20,
Well,
what year was that?
2008.
It was, yeah, it was, it was probably 16, 17 years
So it
ago.
was between,
Yeah.
so the previous
It was
URA
still there.
lapsed in 2007, and that money was spent before the new one was
Yes.
written in 2012. So
Yes.
that's, okay.
Right.
I'm just trying
I
to
knew
get.
that.
Well, this is, we're
No,
recording
I
this so that
understand.
people who weren't here tonight can
Right.
listen to
But
it.
it
So I'm
was
just trying
there.
to get
I mean,
some
why
dates out
can't we
there to
bring it
help
back?
people understand what we're talking about.
It was there. So it's about time that we just start going to council meetings and we just
Yeah,
demand that 2016 law, we just bring it up and everything.
Yeah,
Well, what an expected time frame
Yeah,
for
there's another
that to
question.
be,
to implement those
You know,
changes so we can rewrite.
to
the
vote
plan.
for it, to select, the committee members for that and get it rolling. Would that be like a 3-month job, a 6-month job, a year?
And
I don't
have
know.
a question about the Thornton Shopping Center.
Yeah.
Is the redevelopment money going to redevelop the entire shopping center, or are we gonna have like a weird horseshoe situation?
It's the whole thing.
We're going to have a weird horseshoe if you consider the school, the New America School is going to
You know what I
stay,
mean,
and the
around
clinic,
the
and the
spill.
clinic
They were
stays.
trying to horseshoe around the spill.
Yeah, the Wendy's is going to stay,
Specific property owner,
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's who we're.
So you're taking what they own in full and not
Yes.
just parsing it out?
Yes,
Yes.
that's, we're proceeding to take what that property owner owns in full,
Yes.
which does not include New America School and does not include the Wendy's.
Well,
Or
Wendy's
Clinica.
had a giant remodel.
Or
so I-
Clinica.
Right,
Or the apartment.
Or the apartment,
The apartment.
thank you, Alex. And also does not include the
Let's
apartments
try
on
to
the
put our
east
hands
side.
in those apartments.
They did a really good job. They need to redevelop.
I have one question.
The
They're saying it might be off,
The
but
apartments east of Thornton Shopping
the
Center
Thornton
are
Shopping
not,
Center, they are gonna clean it up and do that. Are they cleaning it up just to go give it to whoever wants to develop it, and we may or may not get what we want, or is it going to be controlled citywide? Because I'm just not clear on that, I don't understand.
yeah, so the question was with Thornton Shopping Center, are we just going to flip it to a developer, or was that sort of the question?
Basically, here's my concern is, believe me, I have lived here, I grew up going to places when it was actually viable there. So my question though is I don't necessarily want, okay, she made a good point, we have so much other stuff going on, we're gonna put all of our money into this place just to sell for someone to make a crap load of money on that. We had to pay for them to do that with our streets and our, our parks, our houses, everything looking like crap. I'm sorry I'm being really candid here because I don't know how else to say it. So I guess that I do want to understand that because I think that's something we really seriously need to do. We've always been gung-ho for Thornton Shopping Center, which I am. I want it to be a better thing. But I also don't want to spend $20 million of my tax, or all of our taxes together. Man, that's going to be $20 million. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To just hand it back over to another, what's his face? The last, I can't remember his name now.
Carl.
Oh, Brown.
Yeah, Jay Brown.
I just called him Eagle Man.
Yeah. So Yeah, so the plan right now is to control the property, relocate the tenants, demolish the buildings, finish the cleanup. That right there is going to take 2 years, at least, 24 months. And during that 24 months, we're going to come back and convene a process of determining how to reach out to the development community to find something good for the city. And that process, community-based, community-based.
This is our one chance to actually, this is the one spot we have
Right.
to fix, to make Thornton right. And I'll be honest, if they're
We've
not
lost
gonna do it right,
control.
then I'll go tell my
I just
mom.
want to, guys, just a reminder that it's, on the recording, it's going to be really hard for people to track what's happening if we have multiple conversations.
Sorry.
So we have one here. No, you. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just making sure that so to branch off what she was saying, like when we do all of this like urban renewal plans and stuff, to kind of about Jay Brown, I guess what I don't know how to articulate. Can we write something in there to say like maybe like how it gets run, or when we can take a property away from someone? Because I guess
We are in the process of eminent domain, and that's all outlined, the steps you have to take in order to
gain control of a property, and that is what the process the city is in right now. So we're following the dictates of that, of the
I was trying
domain
to
law.
articulate what,
Yes, okay.
And are we gonna be able to be involved in the development process, or do we just have to take whatever the developer thinks?
No, I have already talked to the city manager. He knows that, and the community members, and that I and my colleague, we have, that this is going to involve robust community engagement to talk, because a lot of people feel very invested. A lot of us have lived around that property for a long time and are very invested in, because that's going to be the real linchpin in the revitalization of all of South Thornton. And so a lot of people feel very invested in that, and it will be opportunities for community input, yes.
And then I have one more just to clarify. I don't want to clarify here, but so you were saying earlier, we don't necessarily have to use the $8 million towards it. There are other funds we could use. Like, I want to understand that. Like, we don't necessarily have to steal from just our fund to do Thornton Shopping Center, do we? Because we've already helped everyone else. So I'm kind of going back to that. Why are we just using just that like, why are we clearing our account out? Okay, why are we clearing our account out? I'm just going to say it that way. When we've supported all of these other wards while they were building out, were they clearing their accounts out too? Or is it just us giving them money? Like, that's where I want to understand if I'm right.
It's separate funding. So the $8 million was generated by the tax increment produced by commercial properties within that area. It never went to support anything anywhere else. It sat there and waited for a good use. And now we've got a good use for it.
But what they need to hear is our sales tax went into the general fund. Correct.
And to your point,
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, our tax.
Well, I understand it's two separate things, but I guess
the other wards keep their tax sale?
Yeah.
The other wards keeps their sales tax, or it goes into general fund?
So Ward 4, does their sales tax go to them, or does it go to
it's not by wards, it's the URA.
Right. Okay. That's right, I was trying to get
No.
We're just trying to understand.
It's fair. The only sales tax that is captured in other areas is within those defined geographies, and it goes to pay off bonded indebtedness to do new sewers, new streets, new water lines, relocating canals, irrigation canals, things like
that sales tax would be used to buy blighted properties, do streetscaping, enhance our commercial areas that we haven't had. Which to your point.
And that's my point, is why are we not using more? Why is it, like, I know maybe it's a bigger conversation, I'm not really trying, because I know it's getting time to wrap it up, but I just don't understand it. Like, we've already, there's already been all this money put to other stuff. Well, why can't we just, because that $8 million could go do way more things than the thing. We're not even going to touch what's going to happen on the Thornton. So we're just going to throw a little money on there and still have all the crap everywhere else.
I got to go back here first, Sherry, and then I'll come back. So.
Really quick, is it possible to know how the other URAs have spent their money? Like, when Trailwinds was built, did they have to zero out their pocketbook for the
separate?
Or,
it's separate.
How are those funds spent?
Trailwinds was monies were leveraged, but Trailwinds is not part of the
urban renewal
plan. I'm just saying that. Just the point being that that monies have been leveraged to bonds. And just to let you know, TDAs do have the authority to do that. So we could be leveraging funds down here to create.
If you had an idea what you wanted to accomplish, you define it, you put it in the plan, and you go.
Easier, quicker question: for the other URAs, are those also currently run by City Council, or did they go through that process of the 13?
So Thornton City Council is the development authority for the South Thornton URA, the 144th Street URA, and the North Thornton URA. So we're the development authority for all of the URAs in the city right now.
For the Thornton.
So Sherry?
That's okay. Once that $8 million is spent in the funds, whether it goes to Thornton Shopping Center or whatever is done with it, how is that rebuilt again? In other words, once that $8 million is gone, then what?
Right,
Is it replenished? What happens?
we would
then?
continue to capture real estate taxes for the remainder of that 25-year period, so up until 2037. So if it stays like it is now, it's about $500,000 a year, 5, 6, 7. Presumably, it'll grow.
So there would be
But a
several $1 million again by the time 35. Of course, I'll never see that, but by the time 2035 gets here.
So at $500,000 a year, it would take 16 years to get back to $8 million. But if we had our sales tax, we'd do it in 2.
Absolutely.
So how do we get our sales tax? How do we start capturing that?
I think we have to write a new URA plan.
Will we have grants available?
Is there something called a residential renewal plan?
I don't know. Some communities put residential in their urban renewal areas.
What was the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
The question is there something called a residential renewal plan?
I don't know
And if not, how do you
specifically.
get one?
Yeah, I don't know specifically. Some communities include residential within their plan area because they want to build affordable housing and they want to, pay for the infrastructure, that sort of thing. We just haven't done it in Thornton.
But it could be part of the new one.
Do whatever they want.
Let's make a wish. Just a question. Is there any plans in the future to do something or just fix a little bit where Pete's Cafe is? No, actually Pete Cafe, because if you guys tear down Pete's Cafe, it's going to be problems. But the other little, like shopping, mall that is right there, next to it.
Sunrise.
Like south of Pete's Cafe.
Oh, I know.
Do you know how it's a dentist? It's like a dentist and a Pete's Cafe, and it's couple. I think it's their rental business office or something like that.
Heating and cooling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the one sort of, I think it's called the Washington Plaza on Eppinger in Washington. We've got our eyes on that because that's been falling apart in a bad way for a long time.
Blockbuster was there. Let's just get it straight.
Sherry?
I think a lot of us. Otherwise, I'm going to forget what I need to say.
Okay.
For the last, I guess, maybe 20 years or so, in our house, we have talked about this end of the city for a long, long time in the revitalization areas. And what I'm talking about, though, I understand with the commercial, but what I'm talking about is our streets, our areas that really look like they need to be improved, and it's really hard to get that done. And I can speak from fact on that with a 10-project list that I was asked to give my city manager, and out of those 10 projects, only one was done, and that was the park at 88th and Santa Fe. And that's a disappointment because what it consisted of was a lot of our streets on both sides of our ward, and I don't like to divide it because we are Ward 1, and a lot of the streetscaping and things like that. And another thing too is we have schools in the area, school grounds, and it's really difficult to get anything done with like the Thornton Elementary School area and the Thornton High School area and that Washington Street area from 95th to 84th, which has been mentioned so many times. So I understand where you're coming from because I feel the same way. And it's been a topic, as I said, for a long, long time. And that's what a lot of the citizens are saying, not just the people here as well.
Right.
But I'm talking about when you go and you talk to folks all over the ward, that's what they're asking for. All they're asking for is something be done about our streets, our streetscaping, our cleanup. Well, why can't we get that done? And I think that's one of the biggest problems, why Ward 1 folks are so upset.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
And it just seems like, and it is true. Everything does go to the north, and I understand why that happens. I understand about the sales tax and all that. But why can't we do something down here to improve our area?
You are right.
And I, for one, am tired of being told that I live in the slums, I'm a low income whatever, and God knows what else.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm proud to be a citizen of Thornton.
I told those people I live within my means, and my house getting paid off way before theirs is.
Right.
That's basically all the people.
No, and I have to say,
I know you all understand.
we understand the concern.
We've had this conversation many times already. but I just don't understand why.
Yeah, I'm not on
We can't
council.
get anything
I'm
done.
way down the totem pole. So, you know,
I understand that too.
I guess what we want to know is what, I get, with you guys, you know, like, you're the finance guy, you know, I'm sorry, I don't remember what you do, and I will admit. I know you do a lot.
Sorry.
He's a grand
I know you
poobah.
do a lot, but I just don't remember, but what my point is that, what are our options, guys? Like, I don't, like I said, when I said beating the dead horse, I wasn't being rude, what I'm saying is that we go around and around and around, but we don't get action plans. We don't get anything unblurred. It's all blurred lines.
Chad and John and Rob can all attest to that. At our strategic planning conference, we had several conversations, or maybe just one big one, about maintenance, upkeep, beautification, setting a standard, raising the standard, certainly in South Thornton for maintenance, because of all of the things that we all know have and have not happened in our area. Now, that translates into code. Sometimes, as we learned with Thornton Shopping Center, we had to write new code, strengthen the code we had, because we never encountered such a derelict property owner and such a difficult property owner. And we had to draw a line that said, this is not, what you are doing is no longer acceptable in our city. Here's the code, you're going to follow it. And that resulted in him being cited for over 100 code violations, and went before a municipal judge, and he was fined, and he started to make small improvements. That's one example, but we have other areas we need to look at in that way. But I hear you, we're all tired of waiting. So what we can do is, and what you can do as community members, is remind your city leadership that you're waiting for these things, and that you know they've discussed these things, and what is the timeline for these things to be happening, because you are the people we answer to. So I can tell you those conversations happened. I don't know the timeline off the top of my head. I apologize, but that's coming. So we have 5 more minutes.
I was just going to say, I would really like us to stop thinking about South Thornton as a low-income area.
It's not.
Because with the property values as a newer resident being such that you need to make nearly 6 figures. Like me and my wife, our combined income is nearly 6 figures so that we can buy a house in this area. And I'm like, I'm sorry, if I'm going to have that kind of, I've had to work since I was 14 for like 20 plus years to get to this place,
Right.
to live here, and I don't want to be treated like I live in a slum.
Right.
I used to live in Chicago, which was a slum, and like, I know what a slum looks like.
Right.
It's not it.
Right.
I see age maintenance and upkeep as the issues facing South Thornton, as opposed to income.
Then we better save some money to remediate all the gas that's going to be at that intersection. Because someday you're going to be remediating those corners into something else.
Consolidate down in 925. There's some attention.
So I was asking Kathy really quick, and then I'm done asking a question. Because we were talking about all the upkeep, I was wondering, is there any, like, to help burden the funds, like environmental grants or some kind of grant programs that will help with some of the issues that we're facing, especially with like Thornton Shopping Center and stuff like that?
There are.
How much ARPA? Who would apply for that?
In the past, there's some pretty big EPA grants right now. And in the past, we've always been told that Thornton Shopping Center is not eligible because there's a viable, liable party out there, AKA Jay Brown. But I've recently got EPA's attorneys to opine that we would be eligible if we have title to the property. So it used to be the most you could get is $500,000, but they ramped it up to $5 million this year with ARPA funds again. So I think we're probably gonna look seriously at it. It's a heavy lift to apply, and it takes an entire year between application and award. But we'll be looking at that in November.
Well, yeah, anything that we could use. I mean, I would think that as a city, any of us, Kathy, maybe that's something you and Eric can look into as our ward representatives, is some sort of funding that is outside of our pocket, city pocket. Maybe there is something. Who knows? I don't know.
And sometimes there's an opportunity to go to our federal representatives and get support from them at the right time. So that's
maybe this would be the for the people running recently.
are there any whispers or any ideas about what may become of that property? Because I'm sure that, like, depending on what direction that's going, that would potentially open a lot of other funding, like for grants and that type of thing. Like, if it was like going to be turned into like senior housing or a park, you know, whatever might be happening to it would help with grants.
According to the current comprehensive plan, that area is zoned commercial.
Yes.
And so we have to look, we have to get through several steps first. We also have to look at what developers,
who's interested,
what pencils out for them, but it also, that's still part of the that's all part of the conversation. And if what is determined will go there.
Because I
we'll
have
be
a
applying
good
for
friend
grants.
who like does real estate development, and their whole job is to get grants for different, you know, developments around Denver. And I'd love to be like, hey, do you know of anything that could help my neighbor?
Well, we could have a meeting about that. And I just want to say thank you. You can always email or call me or Eric with for your Ward 1 questions, and and a lot of times we do council action requests and pass them along to staff because we don't know the answers, and then we get the answers to you, or they get the answers to you. Speaking of questions and answers, for anybody listening and anybody here who doesn't know, Councilmember Garcia and I are having a coffee meeting, a hello, chit chat, coffee and conversations this Saturday from 10 to 11:30 at the Thornton Arts and Culture Center on Dorothy Boulevard. Anybody, please feel free to stop by and take some of these if you want these flyers to share with your communities. Thank you very much to Chad and John and Rob for being here tonight, and for all of you community members for engaging in this important conversation. Any questions that come up, you can feel free to send my way, and I will send them to the staff, or you can, you can also contact staff on your own with questions that you have. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, it's 7:30. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Do you feel like you've accomplished something?
Twice.
Thank you, guys.
You got it, Angela.